Hello, I'm Lucy Shamaro. I'm going to be working with the sweet pastry I made in one of my previous videos, making mince pies and frangipan tartlets. So my sweet pastry has now had an hour sitting in the fridge, resting to chill up, and she is nice and firm. And I'm just going to start rolling her out on paper, just to start thinning her out. One of the things I made sure to do before I put her into the fridge was I squared her off. I made sure she was flat and even, so when I come to do the rolling, it is much easier to do. The trick here is not to press too hard, just let the rolling pin do the work. If you press down too hard, you're going to get cracks in the pastry, which is going to make it more difficult to cut out later. I always like to start getting my pastry rolled out first onto some greaseproof paper. It just reduces the amount of flour it's exposed to in the final stages, and keeping its texture as intended. Okay. I'm now going to transfer this onto a workbench. Obviously, when putting down flour, don't just drizzle it round, get a nice side swipe. The airflow will allow the flour to carry across the bench, giving you a nice even coat and not ending with patches of flour when finishing. As I previously mentioned in my previous video, we used a creaming method to make this pastry, which required for us to mix the butter and the sugar. If you are making a short crust pastry, the sugar is not present in that dough, so you would actually need to use a rubbing in method rather than creaming method to get that butter incorporated much smoothly. I'm going to keep my pastry relatively thin because I'm going to thumb it up the mould. And thumbing is just where you take a smaller piece of pastry and using your thumb you're going to press it in to that tin to get that nice shape and ensure it gets into the corners. So obviously as chefs we like to get our mise en place done in advance of any event or times of year, so I'm going to use disposable foils, which means I can freeze this dough down if wished to be able to bake it fresh on the day. I'm going to take a cutter which is the same size as the top of my mould, and I'm just going to start cutting out. Now I'm using a deep fill mould, which means I then have space to either add a frangipan topper or pastry top for my dough. So I'm going to take my foil and I'm just going to drop that pastry into the base, and then using my thumb I'm going to press it into the base of it, getting it into that corner and thinning out the bottom of the tart case. I'm then going to take my thumb and pressing around really carefully not to destroy that lovely fluted top, but thinning it out all the way up, making sure there's no holes as I work with it. Like so. I'm going to repeat that now 12 times, and I'm going to do 6 mince pies and 6 frangipan tarts. So I've now thumbed all 12 of my pastry cases. I also rolled the pastry out slightly thinner and cut myself some tops to go onto these tartlets, and they've been in the fridge now for 10 minutes, allowing the pastry to cool and set up and rest. So for the two types I'm going to do, I'm going to take some mincemeat. Now this can be shop bought mincemeat if you choose to make your own mincemeat in advance. Either one is fine. But I'm just going to pipe a small amount of that into the base. So mincemeat is a combination of different fruits, dried fruits, alcohol, which have been matured over a long period of time with the addition of suet. Modernly today they are using something like a vegan suet or a vegetarian suet to make it more accessible for the masses. But it would be made during the summer, jarred up, and then brought out at Christmas as a luxury item to celebrate. Yeah, so I'm only doing 6. I'm doing 6 mince pies and 6 Frangipan mince pies. So each one has got a mincemeat in the base. For the ones that are just having pastry on top, I have put a small amount more mincemeat filling in there, as that's all there is going to be. But for the ones that are going to have Frangipan, I have put a little bit less to make space for that sponge mixture to go in. So put that to the side. I'm going to pipe in my Frangipan to start with. What I'm going to do is pipe round in a small circle from the outside working in. This is going to seal the juices and the mincemeat into the tart, meaning there's no space for it to escape, bubble up, caramelise and stick to the tin. There we go. Then I'm going to take a little bit of egg wash. I'm just going to put a little bit there to help the lid stick. Just go around. I'm going to take these lids and just press them down gently so they catch on the edge where that egg wash has been placed. Just placing them down, and I'm just pressing slightly into it and allowing the edge of the pastry to touch. And then I'm going to take a small sharp knife, or you can take a cocktail stick or a skewer, and I'm just going to put a small hole in the top. As this pastry bakes and the mincemeat inside starts to heat up, it's going to steam. That little hole is going to allow the steam to escape, preventing your pastry from going soggy and stopping it from bubbling out the edges and down the side. I'm going to put these to rest for another 5 minutes, and before baking I'm going to sprinkle the top of the Frangipan ones with some flaked almonds. So my mince pies have now had 15 minutes in the oven. As soon as they came out, with the sweet pastry topped ones, I dusted them with some caster sugar straight away. The steam is going to help that sugar to stick and stay in place. And all you've got to do then is pop them out. If you've done it, you've done a good job. And then for my Frangipan tarts, I'm just going to dust them with a small amount of icing sugar. And I've left them in the moulds because I don't want the icing sugar to get on the outside. I just want it on that little ring at the top. And I'll very carefully just pop them out. And there we have mince pies 2 ways.